A poor woman saved a billionaire's life. Years later, she returns with his twin babies. Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready. Let's start. The bitter February wind howled through the narrow streets of Brooklyn, carrying stray newspapers and debris in its wake. Tina Williams pulled her threadbare coat tighter around her shoulders, quickening her pace as she made her way home from her second job. Her fingers, raw from hours of washing dishes at Pietro's restaurant, ached in the cold. But she couldn't afford to take the bus, not when her grandmother's medication had eaten up most of her weekly earnings. The digital display of a closed convenience store blinked 11:47 p.m. In less than 6 hours, she would need to be up again for her morning shift at the coffee shop. Tina's breath formed small clouds in the frigid air as she turned down the familiar alley that served as her shortcut home. The same route she'd taken hundreds of times before, yet tonight would be different. Tonight would alter the course of her life forever. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of scuffling sounds ahead. Tina hesitated, her heart beginning to race. Smart people avoided dark alleys in New York at night, but this was her neighborhood. She knew every crack in the concrete, every graffiti tag on the walls. Still, something felt off. That's when she saw him, a crumpled figure lying face down near the dumpster, completely motionless. Blood pooled around his head, dark against the dirty snow. "Oh, God," Tina whispered, her first instinct to run, but then she noticed his fingers twitching slightly. He was alive. Years of helping her grandmother had taught Tina basic first aid. She approached cautiously, her phone ready to dial 911. As she got closer, she could see that the man was wearing an expensive suit, now torn and bloodied. His face was badly bruised, but even in this state, she could tell he was handsome. Strong jawline, dark hair peppered with premature gray at the temples. When she touched his neck to check for a pulse, his eyes flew open, wild with panic. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with surprising strength. "No hospital," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "They'll find me." "Sir, you're hurt badly. You need medical attention. Please," he begged, his grip weakening. "They'll kill me if they find me." Tina looked around the empty alley, her mind racing. This man clearly wasn't a typical mugging victim. Something more sinister was at play here. Every rational thought screamed at her to walk away, to let this be someone else's problem. But then she thought of her grandmother's words. "Character isn't who you are when things are easy. It's who you are when doing the right thing could cost you everything." "Can you walk?" she asked, already knowing she would regret this decision. With considerable effort, she managed to help him to his feet. He was tall, much taller than her 5'4" frame, and supporting his weight was a challenge. They moved slowly, pausing every few steps as he fought to remain conscious. By some miracle, they made it to her building without being seen. The elevator was perpetually broken, so they had to tackle 4 flights of stairs. By the time they reached her apartment, they were both drenched in sweat despite the cold. Tina helped him to her small couch, then quickly checked on her grandmother, who was thankfully still asleep in the bedroom, her breathing machine humming softly. When she returned to the living room, her mysterious guest had passed out again. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, she could better assess his injuries. Someone had tried to kill this man. The gash on his head wasn't from a fall, but from a blunt object. His knuckles were bruised and scraped. He had fought back. As Tina cleaned his wounds with supplies from her grandmother's medical kit, she studied his face. There was something familiar about him, like she'd seen him somewhere before. A billboard, maybe, TV, but she couldn't place it. "What's your name?" she asked when his eyes flickered open again. He stared at her for a long moment, confusion clouding his features. I don't know," he finally admitted, panic creeping into his voice. "I can't remember anything." Tina's stomach dropped. This complicated things exponentially. She should have called an ambulance, should have left him in that alley. Instead, she now had an injured amnesiac on her couch, possibly running from killers, while her sick grandmother slept in the next room. "It's okay," she found herself saying, though nothing about this situation was okay. "You're safe here. We'll figure this out." He reached for her hand, his grip gentle this time. "Why are you helping me?" Tina looked at their joined hands, his pale and manicured, hers dark and work-worn. Two people from completely different worlds, brought together by chance or fate. "Because someone once helped my mother when she needed it most," she answered honestly, "and she taught me that kindness isn't a transaction. You don't help people because of what they can give you back." A ghost of a smile crossed his battered face. "Thank you," he whispered, before drifting off to sleep again. Tina watched him for a moment, then went to get extra blankets. Outside her window, snow began to fall, covering the city in a fresh blanket of white, erasing all traces of the violence in the alley. But the events of this night would leave marks that no snow could cover, marks that would change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Little did Tina know, the man on her couch was Lucas Hale, one of the most powerful tech billionaires in America. And by saving his life tonight, she had just become entangled in a dangerous game of corporate betrayal, family treachery, and a conspiracy that would eventually threaten everything she held dear. For now, though, she was simply a young woman who had chosen to help a stranger in need. And sometimes, the biggest changes in our lives come from the smallest choices we make. Dawn crept through the grimy windows of Tina's apartment, painting the walls in shades of amber. She hadn't slept, instead spending the night alternating between checking on her grandmother and monitoring the mysterious man's fever. His expensive watch caught the morning light, a Patek Philippe, though Tina wouldn't have recognized the brand. It was probably worth more than her entire year's salary. The man stirred, his eyes opening slowly. They were an unusual shade of grey, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. "Where?" he started, trying to sit up. "Easy." Tina pressed him back gently. "You took a nasty hit to the head. Do you remember anything from last night?" He touched, the bandage on his forehead wincing. "The alley, you helped me." His voice was different now, cultured, with the kind of accent that spoke of private schools and old money. "But before that, it's all fragments, shadows. Someone was chasing. Me, I think." "I'm Tina," she offered, holding out a glass of water. "Since you can't remember your name, I need to call you something." He took a sip, his hands trembling slightly. "John," he said after a moment. "It feels familiar somehow." The sound of shuffling footsteps made them both turn. Tina's grandmother, Rose, stood in the doorway of her bedroom, her oxygen tank trailing behind her like a faithful pet. Despite her illness, Rose's eyes were sharp as they took in the scene. "Child, what trouble have you brought home this time?" she asked, but there was more amusement than reproach in her voice. "Grandma, you should be in bed." Tina rushed to help her to the worn armchair. "This is John. He needed help." Rose studied the man on their couch, taking in his expensive clothes and the careful way he held himself despite his injuries. And I suppose this help couldn't come from a hospital?" "It's complicated," Tina began, but her grandmother waved her off. "Everything worth doing usually is." Rose's expression softened. "Well, John, you're lucky my granddaughter found you. She's got her mother's heart, too big for her own good sometimes." "I'm grateful," John said quietly. "I'll find a way to repay your kindness." Rose laughed, a deep, rich sound. "Honey, if I had $1 for every time a man promised to repay kindness, I'd be living in Manhattan." She turned to Tina. "You're going to be late for work." Tina checked the clock and swore under her breath. "I can't leave you both." "Go!" Rose insisted. Your friend and I will get along just fine, won't we, John? Something passed between the older woman and their guest. An understanding, perhaps, or a warning. John nodded solemnly. I give you my word. I won't cause any trouble. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Tina would work her shifts, rushing home between jobs to check on her unusual houseguest. John's physical wounds began to heal, but his memory remained frustratingly blank. Yet there were clues about his identity in everything he did. The way he automatically reached for non-existent reading glasses, his instinctive understanding of the stock market reports on TV, the fluid way he switched between English and French when mumbling in his sleep. One evening, Tina returned home to find John teaching Rose how to play chess on an old board they'd found in the closet. Her grandmother was laughing, truly laughing, for the first time since her diagnosis. Your guest is a terrible teacher, Rose announced. He keeps letting me win. I assure you, I'm doing no such thing, John protested, but his eyes twinkled with amusement. You're simply a natural strategist. Tina watched them from the kitchen as she prepared dinner, simple soup and sandwiches, all they could afford. John had offered to contribute money, pulling out a wallet thick with $100 bills, but Tina had refused. Something told her that accepting his money would change things between them, shift the delicate balance they'd found. Later that night, after Rose had gone to bed, Tina found John standing by the window, staring at the city lights. He'd borrowed some of her late father's clothes, old jeans and a faded NYU sweatshirt that somehow looked wrong on his aristocratic frame. Some memories came back today, he said without turning around. Nothing useful, just feelings, impressions. I think I was lonely before in my real life. Tina joined him at the window. What makes you say that? This, he gestured to the apartment, to the chessboard, to the dishes drying in the rack. It feels foreign but good, like something I've been missing without knowing it was gone. Their shoulders were almost touching. Tina could smell the generic soap he'd used, mixed with something else, an expensive cologne that still clung to him, a remnant of his other life. Sometimes the simplest things are the hardest to find. He turned to her then, his face illuminated by the city's glow. Tina, A sharp crack split the air. John reacted instantly, pulling Tina down as the window shattered. A bullet embedded itself in the wall where they had been standing moments before. They found me, John whispered, his body shielding hers. The terror in his voice was mixed with something else. Recognition. For a split second, his eyes cleared, as if the danger had knocked something loose in his mind. Tina's heart pounded against her ribs. Who are they? I don't know, he said, but she could tell he was lying. The amnesiac confusion was gone, replaced by a cold calculation she hadn't seen before. Get your grandmother. We need to leave, now. As they hurried to Rose's room, Tina caught a glimpse of their reflection in the broken window, her small frame pressed against his protective stance, two people from different worlds bound together by violence and trust. She had a sudden, terrible feeling that this was only the beginning. Outside, a black SUV idled in the street, its tinted windows concealing whoever had just tried to kill them. But more importantly, concealing whoever John really was, and why his presence in her life might get them all killed. The old motel on the outskirts of Buffalo wasn't much, but it was warm and, more importantly, anonymous. Tina watched from the window as snow continued to fall, coating the nearly empty parking lot in white. They'd been driving for hours, taking back roads and switching cars twice. Movements that John had orchestrated with disturbing efficiency for someone who claimed to have amnesia. Rose had fallen asleep in one of the twin beds, her breathing machine humming steadily. They'd barely had time to grab it along with her medications before fleeing the apartment. The bullet hole in the wall had been all the convincing her grandmother needed. Sometimes running is the smartest thing you can do, she'd said, as they'd hurried down the fire escape. A soft knock at the door made Tina jump. John's distinctive pattern. 2 quick taps, pause, 1 tap. She let him in, noting how he immediately scanned the room, checking the windows, the corners, the shadows. He'd done this every time he entered a space, like a soldier in a war zone. "I got supplies," he said, setting down several bags. "Food, clothes, burner phones." He pulled out a small orange bottle. "And your grandmother's prescription. The pharmacy here had it in stock." Tina stared at the medication. It was the expensive brand that their insurance wouldn't cover, the one Rose had been trying to stretch out by taking half doses. "How did you—" "I had some cash," he said simply, but wouldn't meet her eyes. The prescription would have cost hundreds of dollars. "John," she said quietly, "you remembered something, didn't you, back at the apartment when the shooting started?" He busied himself arranging the supplies, his movements precise and controlled. "Just fragments, not enough to be useful." "Stop lying to me." Tina's voice was firm but gentle. "You know exactly who's after you, don't you?" He stilled, his back to her. The motel's neon sign filtered through the thin curtains, casting alternating red and blue shadows across his profile. For a moment he looked like 2 different people. The vulnerable man she'd rescued, and someone else, someone harder. "The less you know, the safer you'll be," he finally said. "We left everything because of you. My job, our home." Tina gestured to her sleeping grandmother. "We deserve the truth." John, if that was really his name, turned to face her. The bruises on his face had faded to yellowish shadows, making his grey eyes seem even more intense. "You're right, but the truth could get you killed." "We're already in danger," she countered. "At least let us know why." He crossed the room, in 3 long strides, stopping just inches from her. This close, she could see the internal battle raging behind his composed exterior. "I remember feelings more than facts," he said softly. "I remember being surrounded by people but always alone, making decisions that affected thousands of lives, never trusting anyone." His hand rose, hovering near her cheek, but not quite touching. "Then I remember waking up on your couch and for the first time in years feeling safe." The air between them crackled with unspoken words. Tina's heart hammered in her chest, but she held her ground. "Safe is the last thing we are right now." "No," he agreed, his voice dropping lower, "but I feel more alive than I have in years." Later, Tina would never be sure who moved first. One moment they were standing in charged silence, the next his lips were on hers, gentle but insistent. She tasted mint and something darker, more complex. His hands cupped her face as if she were something precious, something that might break or disappear. The kiss deepened, and Tina felt herself being drawn into his gravity. This was madness, kissing a stranger, a man who might be dangerous, whose very presence had upended her life. But his touch felt familiar somehow, as if her body remembered something her mind had never known. A small sound from Rose's bed broke the spell. They jumped apart like guilty teenagers, both breathing heavily. The older woman was still asleep, but the moment had shattered. "I'm sorry," John said, running a hand through his hair. I shouldn't have—" "Don't," Tina cut him off. "Don't apologize unless you regret it." Their eyes met in the dim light. "I don't," he admitted. "That's what scares me." A sudden movement outside caught Tina's attention. Through the gap in the curtains, she saw a dark figure moving across the parking lot, heading toward their room. The stranger's hand reached inside his jacket. "Down!" John yelled, tackling her to the floor as gunshots shattered the window. Glass rained down around them as he covered her body with his own. This time his protective instinct seemed less like training and more like raw desperation. "Rose!" Tina screamed, but her grandmother was already awake, pressing herself against the far wall, away from the windows. John pulled a gun from his waistband, a weapon Tina hadn't even known he had. The way he held it, with practiced confidence, was yet another piece of the puzzle of his true identity. He fired 2 precise shots through the broken window. A cry of pain echoed from outside, followed by the sound of running footsteps and a car engine roaring to life. "We need to move," John said, helping Tina up. His hands lingered on her arms, checking for injuries. "They're getting closer." "Who are they?" Tina demanded, her voice shaking. "Please, no more lies." John looked at her, then at Rose, who was calmly gathering her medical equipment as if bullets flying through windows were an everyday occurrence. He seemed to come to a decision. "My name," he said slowly, "is Lucas Hale, and the people trying to kill me, they're my family." The name hit Tina like a physical blow. Everyone knew Lucas Hale, the reclusive tech genius, the billionaire innovator. She'd seen his face on magazine covers, on news reports about his company's groundbreaking AI developments. Now she understood why he'd seemed familiar that first night. "Your brother," she whispered, remembering news stories about the Hale family. "Dynasty. He's the one who wants you dead." Lucas nodded grimly. Derek never could stand the idea of his younger brother having control of the company. He checked the gun's magazine. "But he's not working alone. Someone else is pulling the strings, someone inside my own board of directors." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Lucas, she couldn't think of him as John anymore, grabbed their bags. "I'll explain everything once we're safe, but right now we need to run." As they hurried to the car, Tina realized that their kiss had changed everything and nothing. The mystery man she'd been falling for was gone, replaced by someone far more dangerous. But the way he held her hand as they ran, the gentle way he helped Rose into the car, that was real. That was still her John. They peeled out of the parking lot just as police cars turned into the street. In the rearview mirror, Tina watched the motel disappear into the snowy night. She touched her lips, still tingling from their kiss, and wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or found something worth fighting for. The lake house in the Adirondacks emerged from the morning mist like a memory, its weathered cedar siding blending with the surrounding forest. Lucas pulled their stolen Honda onto the gravel driveway, killing the engine but keeping his hands on the wheel, knuckles white with tension. "No one knows about this place," he said, his voice rough from hours of silence. "Not Derek, not the board, not even my lawyers. My mother bought it before she died, her escape plan that she never got to use." Tina studied his profile in the pale dawn light. In the 12 hours since his revelation at the motel, Lucas had slowly begun filling in the gaps of his past, each memory seeming to age him. The playful man who had taught her grandmother chess was disappearing, replaced by someone carrying the weight of empire and betrayal. "Your mother," she ventured carefully. "You never talk about her." "Christina Hale. She was the heart of Hale Technologies before it became what it is today." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You remind me of her sometimes, the way you face things head-on, no matter how scared you are." From the back seat, Rose stirred, her oxygen machine whirring as she woke. "This air," she said, inhaling deeply, "reminds me of where I grew up. In Virginia, trees have a way of making you forget your troubles." They unloaded their meager belongings, Lucas insisting on carrying Rose's medical equipment himself. The house was small by Hale standards, just 3 bedrooms and a great room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. A thin layer of dust covered everything, but the electricity worked, and the pantry was stocked with non-perishables. "Mom kept it ready," Lucas explained, opening cabinets in the kitchen. "She always said that money could disappear overnight, that we needed a backup plan." His laugh was bitter. Derek called her paranoid. Now I wonder if she knew something was coming. While Rose settled into one of the bedrooms for a much-needed rest, Tina found Lucas in what had clearly been his mother's study. He stood before a wall of photographs, a visual timeline of the Hale family's rise to power. Christina Hale featured prominently in the earlier photos, a striking woman with Lucas's grey eyes and determined expression. "She died when I was 19, Lucas said, touching one of the frames. "Car accident, officially. But now—" He trailed off, lost in thought. "You think Derek was involved?" "I think nothing about my family is what it seems." Lucas turned to a more recent photo. Himself and Derek at the Hale Technologies IPO, both in expensive suits, smiling for the cameras. "Did you know he was the one who encouraged me to develop the AI security system? Said it would revolutionize the company. And it did. Made us billions. But he kept pushing for military applications, ways to use it for surveillance, control. And you refused. I was going to shut it down completely. The potential for abuse was too high." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that reminded Tina of when she'd first found him in that alley. "I had called an emergency board meeting for the next day. Then suddenly I'm being chased through Brooklyn with a head wound and no memory." Tina approached him slowly, like one might a wounded animal. "The board meeting. It would have given you control. It would have exposed everything, the secret contracts, the backdoor deals." His voice dropped. "The prototype weapons Derek was developing without approval. He couldn't let that happen." A floorboard creaked behind them. They turned to find Rose standing in the doorway, looking at the photos with keen interest. "Your mother," she said to Lucas. "She's wearing a necklace in these pictures. A silver pendant with a blue stone." Lucas frowned. "Her sapphire, she never took it off. After she died, it disappeared. Derek said she must have lost it in the crash." "Check the house," Rose said with quiet certainty. "A woman like that, who prepared this place as a sanctuary? She left you something? Trust an old woman who knows?" About leaving breadcrumbs for her children to follow. The next hour was spent searching the house methodically. Lucas moved with growing frustration, pulling out drawers, checking behind paintings. But it was Tina who found it, a false bottom in the master bedroom's jewelry box, revealed when she accidentally pressed a hidden catch. The sapphire pendant lay nestled in faded velvet, along with a USB drive and a letter in elegant handwriting. "My dearest Lucas," he read aloud, his voice shaking. "If you're reading this, then my fears about Derek were justified. The proof you need is on this drive, proof of what your brother has been planning since before my accident. Be careful who you trust. But more importantly, when you find someone you can trust completely, hold onto them with everything you have. Love, Mum." Lucas stared at the pendant, running his thumb over its smooth surface. "She knew. All this time, she was trying to protect me, and I never saw it." Tina placed her hand over his. "You see it now, and you're not alone anymore." He looked at her, then really looked at her, as if seeing past all the walls he'd built around himself. "No," he agreed softly. "I'm not." The moment was interrupted by a distant sound that made them all freeze. The distinctive whir of helicopter blades. Lucas was instantly in motion, shoving the pendant and drive into his pocket. "They found us. We need to move. Now." "How?" Tina helped Rose to her feet. "They'll see any car leaving." A slight smile played at Lucas's lips, one that reminded her of the man she'd first started falling for. "Mum didn't just leave me evidence." He pressed a hidden panel beside the fireplace, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. "She left me an escape route. There's a boat dock under the house, completely hidden from above." As they hurried down the stairs, Tina grabbed his arm. "Lucas, wait! Once we get away, what then? We can't keep running forever." He cupped her face in his hands, and for a moment She thought he might kiss her again. Instead, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm done running," he whispered. "It's time to take back what's mine. But first, I need to get you and Rose somewhere safe." "We're safer with you," she insisted. The helicopter sounds grew closer. Lucas pulled away reluctantly. "That's what my mother thought too. And Derek made her pay for that trust with her. Life." His eyes were haunted. "I won't let that happen to you. Either of you." As they reached the hidden dock where a sleek boat waited, Tina realized they had reached a crossroads. Lucas was ready to fight back, but he was also ready to push away the people he cared about, all in the name of protection. The question was, would she let him? The answer would have to wait. Right now, they had a lake to cross, assassins to evade, and a conspiracy to unravel. But as they cast off into the misty morning, Tina made a silent promise to herself. She hadn't saved Lucas's life just to let him face his demons alone. Whether he liked it or not, they were in this together. Now, above them, the helicopter's searchlight swept the property, seeking what was already gone. And in her pocket, Christina Hale's sapphire pendant pressed against Tina's hip, secretly passed to her by Lucas when he'd held her, along with a note. She hadn't had time to read. Whatever it said, she knew it would change everything. Again. The rundown motel outside Albany wasn't much, but its cash-only policy and lack of security cameras made it perfect for their needs. While Rose rested in one of the rooms, Tina sat cross-legged on the bed in the adjacent room, finally unfolding the note Lucas had slipped her along with his mother's pendant. "My mother knew the truth would cost her everything. Now it might cost me you, but you deserve to know what you're really part of." The pendant opens. Inside is a key to a safety deposit box. "Whatever happens, whatever I say or do to push you away, remember, you're the first person since my mother that I've trusted completely." Tina's fingers found the hidden catch in the sapphire pendant, revealing a tiny key nestled inside. She looked up to where Lucas sat at the room's small desk, his laptop, purchased with cash from a pawn shop, casting blue light across his tense features. "Your mother's files," Tina said quietly. "What did you find?" Lucas didn't look. Up from the screen, everything, financial records, emails, surveillance footage. Derek didn't just want control of the company. He's been selling our AI technology to the highest bidders, terrorist groups, dictators, anyone willing to pay. His voice cracked. "The car crash that killed our mother, she had proof he was already making deals back then. She was going to expose him. And now history's repeating itself," Tina observed. "He tried to kill you for the same reason." "Not exactly the same." Lucas finally turned to her, his face haunted. "The technology's evolved. What Derek's built in secret, it's beyond surveillance. It's about control. Imagine AI that could predict and manipulate human behavior on a mass scale. Elections, financial markets, social movements, all guided by invisible hands." The implications made Tina's blood run cold. "That's why you were going to shut it down." "I thought I could contain it. I was wrong." He stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "Derek's got board members in his pocket, government contracts lined up. The night he tried to kill me, I discovered he was about to sell the entire system to a consortium of private military contractors." Tina watched him move, seeing both versions of him at once. The vulnerable man she'd nursed back to health, and the powerful billionaire fighting a shadow war with his own brother. "The safety deposit box," she said. "What's in it?" "Insurance." Lucas stopped pacing. "Mom kept copies of everything, but more importantly, she left instructions. People we can trust, ways to expose Derek that he won't see coming." He turned to her, his expression pained. "That's why I need you and Rose to go to the address in the box. There's someone there who can protect you while I end this." "No." Tina stood, facing him. "You don't get to decide that." "Tina, please." He stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "Derek won't stop. Anyone close to me is a target. You saw what happened at the lake house." And you saw what happened when you tried to handle things alone, she countered. You ended up bleeding in an alley. That was different. I didn't know what I was up against then. And I didn't know I was saving a billionaire's life. But here we are. Tina held up the pendant. Your mother trusted me with this. She must have had a reason. My mother is dead because she tried to fight Derek alone, Lucas snapped. I won't let that happen to you. A soft knock interrupted their argument. Rose entered without waiting for a response, her oxygen tank trailing behind her. You two are loud enough to wake the dead, she commented mildly. And both of you are missing the point. They turned to her, surprised. Rose settled into the room's only armchair with the dignity of a queen on her throne. Lucas, honey, you're so focused on not repeating your mother's tragedy that you can't see you're making the same mistake she did. What do you mean? She tried to protect you by keeping you in the dark. How did that work out? Rose's voice was gentle but firm. And now you're doing the same thing, trying to shield Tina by pushing her away. The strength of evil men lies in the isolation of good ones. A notification pinged on Lucas's laptop. His eyes widened as he read the screen. Derek's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's going to authorize the sale of the AI system. Then we don't have much time, Tina said. We. Lucas looked between her and Rose, conflict clear on his face. Yes, we. Rose pulled something from her pocket, a small notebook. While you two were arguing, I've been thinking. Your brother expects you to do exactly what you're planning. Try to stop him alone. Be the hero. But he doesn't know about us. We're your wild card. Lucas stared at the elderly woman with newfound respect. What are you suggesting? Your mother left you a way to expose Derek, but she also left you a lesson about trust. Rose opened the notebook, revealing pages of carefully written observations. While I was teaching you chess, I was also watching how you think, how you strategize. You're brilliant but predictable. Derek knows that too, so let's be unpredictable. Tina picked up the thread. The board meeting. They'll be expecting you to either show up guns blazing or not show up at all. But they won't be expecting you, Lucas finished slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. A nobody from Brooklyn and a sick old woman. Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight, Rose said with a smile that held decades of wisdom. Now sit down, both of you. We've got a long night ahead, and I'm going to teach you something about real strategy. As they gathered around Rose's notebook, Tina felt Lucas's hand find hers under the table. She squeezed it gently, a silent promise. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Outside, a storm was brewing, lightning illuminating the parking lot in stark flashes. But inside room 23 of the Albany Gateway Motel, three unlikely allies bent their heads together, planning a battle that would shake the foundations of one of the most powerful corporations in America. And somewhere, Tina thought, Christina Hale was smiling. Her son had finally learned the lesson she died trying to teach him, that trust wasn't a weakness to overcome, but a strength to embrace. Now, they just had to survive long enough to prove it. The Hale Technologies Tower cut through the Manhattan skyline like a blade of glass and steel, its 90 stories reflecting the morning sun. From the service entrance, Tina watched executives and board members arrive in their luxury cars, each one passing through layers of security with practiced ease. She adjusted her cleaning service uniform, heart pounding beneath the borrowed badge. Remember, Lucas's voice came through her nearly invisible earpiece. Once you're inside, you have exactly 47 minutes before the board meeting starts. The security rotation gives you a 3-minute window to access the executive floor. Through the service elevator. I remember. Tina checked her cleaning cart one last time. Hidden beneath supplies and rags was Rose's oxygen tank, modified by Lucas to house both the breathing apparatus and Christina Hale's explosive evidence. Is Rose in position? I'm exactly where I need to be, child. Rose's calm voice joined the conversation. She was already inside, having arrived an hour earlier in her disguise as a potential investor's financial advisor. Our friend at reception bought my story completely. Amazing what a good pantsuit and a few dropped names can accomplish. Tina smiled despite her nerves. Rose had transformed herself with elegant clothes and carefully styled silver hair, carrying herself with the confident air of old. Money. No one would connect this polished financial expert with the sick grandmother from Brooklyn. Lucas, Tina whispered as she approached the service entrance. Are you sure about your part? There was a pause before he answered. It has to be this way. Derek needs to think he's got me cornered. What he didn't say hung in the air between them, that his role in their plan was also the most dangerous. The service entrance guard barely glanced at Tina's forged credentials, waved her through with bored indifference. She kept her head down, pushing her cart toward the service elevator, mentally reviewing the building's layout Lucas had drilled into her head. Package is moving, she heard Rose murmur, meaning Derek had just arrived. Show time, Lucas responded softly. Tina reached the service elevator just as an alert rippled through the building's security channels. Lucas had been spotted entering the lobby. She could picture it, her billionaire walking straight through the front door, unarmed and alone, appearing to play right into his brother's hands. The service elevator was empty when it arrived. Tina pushed her cart inside, watching the numbers climb. Her part of the plan was simple but crucial. While Lucas drew attention in the lobby and Rose distracted the board members gathering for their meeting, she would access Derek's private office and plant Christina's evidence where it couldn't be ignored. The elevator stopped at the 88th floor. Tina held her breath as the doors opened, but the hallway was clear. Security would be focused on Lucas now. She pushed her cart toward Derek's office, remembering Lucas's words from their planning session. Derek's arrogance is his weakness. He never changes his security codes because he never thinks anyone would dare challenge him. The keypad accepted the code on her first try. Tina slipped inside the massive corner office, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive artwork. This was Derek's sanctuary, his seat of power, and she was about to turn it into his prison. She was reaching for the hidden oxygen tank when a voice froze her in place. I have to admit, I didn't see this coming. Derek Hale stepped out from behind his desk, a gun trained steadily on her chest. He looked so much like Lucas. The same. Height, similar features, but his eyes were cold, calculating where Lucas's held warmth. The cleaning staff disguise was clever, he continued conversationally. But did you really think I wouldn't have facial recognition running on every entrance? I've known about you since Brooklyn, Miss Williams, the good Samaritan who saved my little brother. Tina's mind raced. This wasn't part of the plan. Derek was supposed to be heading to the board meeting, not waiting in his office. You're probably wondering about Lucas, Derek smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Don't worry. He's being well taken care of in the lobby. And your elderly friend. Security is escorting her out as we speak. I must say, using a sick old woman as a distraction, that's cold even by my standards. You killed your own mother, Tina said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I don't think you get to judge anyone's standards. Something dangerous flashed in Derek's eyes. My mother was weak. She never understood what real power meant. Lucas is just like her, too squeamish to do what needs to be done. You mean selling weapons to terrorists, betraying your country? I mean securing our place in history. Derek's gun didn't waver. This technology could reshape the world, control it even. But Lucas wants to shut it down, throw away everything we've built because of his precious morals. A commotion outside drew his attention for a split second. Tina seized her chance, grabbing the closest object, a heavy crystal award, and hurling it at him. The gun went off, the bullet shattering one of the windows as she dove behind the desk. "Impressive," Derek called out, his footsteps circling. "The desk. I can see why Lucas likes you. That same foolish bravery my mother had." Tina's fingers found what she was looking for, the silent alarm button under Derek's desk. Lucas had told her about it, how it would trigger an automatic lockdown of the executive floor. She pressed it just as Derek rounded the desk. The office doors slammed shut. Alarms blared throughout the building. "You've just trapped yourself in here with me," Derek pointed out, leveling the gun at her again. Tina smiled, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across Derek's face. "No," she said calmly. "I've trapped you in here with us." The ventilation, grate above Derek's head, burst open. Lucas dropped down behind his brother, his movement fluid and practiced. Before Derek could turn, Lucas had him in a chokehold, the gun clattering to the floor. "Hello, brother," Lucas said grimly. "We need to talk about Mom." Tina pulled Christina's pendant from her pocket, where it had been all along, not hidden in the oxygen tank as Derek had been led to believe. Rose's tank had been a decoy, designed to draw attention while the real evidence stayed hidden in plain sight. "You didn't really think we'd try to sneak evidence into the building, did you?" she asked the struggling Derek, "when it was already waiting here in your private server room?" Because that's where Lucas had been while appearing to cause a distraction. In the lobby, in the server room directly above Derek's office, accessing the hidden files their mother had buried years ago. The evidence wasn't just on a USB drive, it was woven into the very systems Derek had used to build his illegal empire. "The board is watching everything right now," Lucas told his brother quietly. "Every file, every deal, every secret. Mom's last gift to us, a kill switch that would activate the moment someone tried to abuse her creation, and you just triggered it." Through the broken window, they could hear sirens approaching. Federal agents, tipped off by Rose's real mission, and during her distraction, would be securing the building. Derek went limp in Lucas's hold, the fight draining out of him. "She always loved you more," he spat. "Her precious younger son. She never trusted me with anything." "She loved us both," Lucas corrected, real pain in his voice. "She just knew you better than you knew yourself. This was her way of saving you from what you'd become." As authorities swarmed the office, Tina caught Lucas's eye across the room. In that moment, she saw everything he couldn't say. His gratitude, his fear for her, and something deeper, something that had grown from trust into love. They had won, but the victory felt hollow somehow. Because beneath the triumph was the tragedy of two brothers, a dead mother's final gambit, and the price of power. Yet as she watched Lucas finally face his demons, Tina knew that some victories weren't about winning. They were about finding the courage to trust, to love, and to fight for something bigger than yourself. Even if that fight cost you everything you thought you wanted, even if it gave you everything you never knew you needed. The penthouse suite at the Four Seasons felt like another world compared to Tina's apartment in Brooklyn. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Central Park, now bathed in the golden light of sunset. Secret Service agents stood guard outside, while federal investigators cycled through, debriefing them on the events at Hale Technologies. Tina sat on the plush sofa, watching Lucas pace as he fielded endless calls from board members, lawyers, and government officials. He'd shed his jacket hours ago, his crisp white shirt wrinkled, sleeves rolled up to reveal the bruises from his fight with Derek. Every few minutes, his eyes would find her, as if making sure she was still there. Rose dozed in a recliner, an actual nurse now attending to her oxygen needs. The excitement had taken its toll, but she'd refused to be separated from them. "Family stays together," she'd declared when Lucas suggested moving her to a private medical facility. Family. The word hung in the air between them all, redefined by the events of the past week. No, the AI system stays offline until we've completed a full audit, Lucas was saying into his phone, his voice firm. I don't care about the military contracts. It's done. He ended the call, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The board's not happy? Tina asked softly. They're terrified. Lucas dropped onto the sofa beside her. Derek's arrest, the evidence of illegal sales, my mother's fail-safe, it's all going public. Our stock is in freefall. Some of them are calling for my resignation. Can they do that? Force you out? They can try. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. But Mom thought of that too. The fail-safe didn't just expose Derek's crimes. It revealed which board members were complicit. Half of them will be facing federal charges by morning. Tina curled her legs under her, studying his profile. What happens now? Now? Lucas turned to her, his grey eyes troubled. Now I have to rebuild my company from the ground up, prove to the world that Hale Technologies can be a force for good, not control. But first, he reached for her hand. First, I need to make sure you and Rose are safe. Derek's in custody, Tina reminded him. Derek wasn't working alone. He had partners, buyers, people who stood to make billions from that AI system. They won't be happy about losing their investment. As if to emphasize his point, Lucas's phone buzzed with another message. His expression darkened as he read it. What is it? Death threats, not just against me. Against you and Rose, too. Someone leaked your identities to the press. He stood abruptly, that protective instinct. She knew so well taking over. I'm moving you both to a secure location. Private security, new identities if necessary. No. Tina's voice was quiet but firm. Tina, please, these people are dangerous, and we'll face them together. She stood, taking his hands in hers. Isn't that what today proved? That we're stronger together than apart? I can't lose you. The words seemed torn from him. Either of you. You're the only real family I have left. Then don't push us away. Rose's voice made them both turn. The older woman was awake, watching them with clear eyes. Your mother tried to fight alone, and it cost her everything. Don't repeat her mistakes. Lucas looked between them. The woman he'd grown to love, and the grandmother who'd become his own. The weight of empire sat heavy on his shoulders, but for the first time he wasn't carrying it alone. A knock at the door made them all tense. One of the Secret Service agents entered, looking grave. Mr. Hale, there's been a development. Your brother, he's asking to see you. Tina felt Lucas stiffen beside her. Why? He says he has information about your mother's death, details that weren't in her files. The room seemed to hold its breath. Lucas's hand tightened around Tina's. You don't have to go, she told him. Yes, I do. He turned to her, his expression conflicted. But I need you with me. Both of us, Rose interjected, struggling to her feet. When they both started to protest, she waved them off. I've spent my life watching people hide from hard truths. Sometimes the only way past pain is through it. Together. Lucas looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Rose's steady gaze stopped him. All right, he said finally, together. As they prepared to leave for the federal detention center, Tina caught a glimpse of their reflection in the penthouse windows. Lucas in his rumpled business clothes, herself still in the cleaning uniform, Rose with her oxygen tank and determined expression. An unlikely family, forged in crisis and bound by something stronger than blood. Outside, reporters gathered at the hotel entrance, hungry for details about the Hale Technologies scandal. Security threats lurked in the shadows. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges they could barely imagine. But as they stepped into the elevator, Tina felt Lucas's hand find hers again. She remembered that night in the alley, how a simple choice to help a stranger had changed everything. Sometimes the biggest risks brought the greatest rewards. Sometimes family was something you found, not something you were born into. And sometimes, she thought as the elevator descended, love was about facing the darkness together, knowing that the light you carried within was stronger than any shadow ahead. They were about to face Derek one last time. But this time, they weren't facing him as victims or adversaries. They were facing him as a family, broken, imperfect, but unshakably united. The truth about Christina Hale's death waited in a prison cell, and with it, perhaps, the final key to healing the wounds that had shaped them all. The Metropolitan Detention Center loomed before them, a concrete monolith against the night sky. Lucas stared through the bulletproof glass of the visiting room, his reflection ghosting over Derek's face on the other side. His brother looked smaller somehow in the orange jumpsuit, the familial resemblance between them more pronounced without his expensive suits and practiced sneer. Tina sat beside Lucas, her knee touching his under the table. Rose had insisted on coming, but agreed to wait outside with the federal agents, her oxygen tank humming softly in the hallway. "You look terrible," Derek said by way of greeting. The bruises from their fight were vivid on his face. "You wanted to talk about Mom." Lucas's voice was flat. "Talk." Derek's eyes flicked to Tina, then back to his brother. "Aren't some family matters better discussed in private?" "She is family." Lucas's tone left no room for argument. "Whatever you have to say it to both of us." Something shifted in Derek's expression, resignation perhaps, or the weight of long-held secrets. "Did you ever wonder why Dad never talked about the night Mom died?" Lucas went very still. Their father, William Hale, had died 3 years ago, a recluse in his final years, drinking himself to death in his Manhattan penthouse. He'd never recovered from Christina's loss. "The official report said she lost control of the car," Lucas said carefully. "Wet roads, mechanical failure. That's what Dad paid to have the report say." Derek leaned forward, chains clinking. But he knew the truth. He was there that night. The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. Tina reached for his hand under the table, grounding him. "What are you talking about?" "Mom called him right after she found proof of my first weapons deal. She was going to expose everything, not just my plans, but the company's history, of illegal contracts going back to when Dad was in charge." Derek's smile was bitter. "She didn't know he was the one who taught me the game." Lucas's free hand clenched into a fist. "You're lying. Why do you think he drank himself to death? Why do you think he could barely look at us after she died?" Derek shook his head. He followed her that night, tried to talk her out of going. Public, when she refused, he tampered with her brakes. No. But even as Lucas denied it, memories surfaced. His father's descent into alcoholism, the way he'd flinched whenever Christina's name was mentioned, his obsessive control of the accident investigation. "Dad didn't mean for her to die," Derek continued, his voice hollow. "He just wanted to force her to pull over, to give him time to convince her. But the rain was worse than he expected. The ravine was deeper." "How long have you known?" Lucas's voice was barely a whisper. "He told me everything the night before he died. His final confession." Derek met his brother's eyes. "I was already too far down my own path by then, but he wanted you to stay innocent, to be everything he and I weren't." Tina watched the color drain from Lucas's face. "Why tell us this now?" "Because my little brother needs to understand what he's really inherited." Derek leaned back, the fluorescent lights harsh on his features. "It's not just a company, Lucas. It's a legacy built on secrets and blood. Mom tried to change that, to make it something pure. Look what it got her." "She succeeded," Tina cut in, her voice sharp. "Everything you and your father tried to hide, she found a way to expose it all, even from beyond the grave." Derek's laugh was empty. "And what will that exposure cost? The company's stock is worthless. Thousands will lose their jobs. Our family name is ruined. Is that the victory she wanted?" No, Lucas finally spoke, his voice stronger. What she wanted was the truth, the chance for someone to make different choices. He stood, pulling Tina up with him. Thank you for telling me about Dad. Now I know exactly what needs to change. You can't change what we are, little brother. Watch me. Lucas turned to leave, then paused. Did you ever wonder why Mom's failsafe activated when it did? Not when you first started selling weapons, or when you tried to kill me. Derek frowned. What do you mean? It activated when you threatened Tina and Rose, because Mom knew... Lucas's voice caught. She knew salvation wouldn't come from within our family. It would come from someone who showed us a different way to live. As they left the visiting room, Tina saw tears on Lucas's cheeks, the first she'd ever seen him shed. They found Rose waiting anxiously in the hallway. I heard everything through the door, she said softly, reaching for both of them. Come here, children. They stood there in the cold hallway of the detention center, an elderly black woman holding the broken pieces of a billion-dollar dynasty. In her arms, Lucas buried his face in Rose's shoulder, his body shaking with silent sobs. Let it out, baby, Rose murmured. Family means you don't have to be strong all the time. Later, in the car heading back to the city, Lucas stared at his mother's pendant. I always thought Derek was the villain of our story, he said quietly. But it was never that simple, was it? No, Tina agreed, but that's what makes your choice so important. You can't change the past, but you can decide what happens next. We can decide, he corrected her, taking her hand. Together. Outside, the city lights blurred past like stars. Rose had fallen asleep against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Lucas watched her with a tenderness that made Tina's heart ache. You know what this means, he said finally. Dismantling everything. Starting over, it won't be easy. The press will be brutal, investors will run. We might lose everything. Not everything, Tina squeezed his hand. Not what matters most. Lucas looked at their joined hands, pale and dark, wealth and struggle, past and future intertwined. Mom would have loved you both, he whispered. She did, Rose spoke without opening her eyes. Why do you think she left breadcrumbs for someone like Tina to follow? She knew exactly what her son would need. The truth of it settled over them like a blanket. Christina Hale's legacy wasn't just in the evidence she'd hidden or the failsafe she'd built. It was in the family she'd helped create, even after death, a family strong enough to break the cycle of secrets and lies. As they drove through the sleeping city, Lucas began to plan, not for revenge or power, but for redemption, for a future where the Hale name would stand for something his mother could be proud of. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, nothing worth building ever was. The boardroom of Hale Technologies felt different now. Gone were the old leather chairs and mahogany table, replaced by modern, sustainable furniture. Sunlight streamed through, windows that had once been tinted to project power and mystery. It was Tina's idea. Transparency, starting with the literal. Lucas stood before the remaining board members, his presentation on the screens behind him. 6 weeks had passed since Derek's arrest, and the company was still bleeding. Share prices had stabilized, but at a fraction of their former value. 3 major military contracts had been cancelled. 17 senior executives had resigned. The AI division will be completely restructured, Lucas was saying, his voice steady despite the hostile stares. All surveillance and prediction algorithms will be open source with civilian oversight committees. We're pivoting to medical applications, climate modeling, education. You're gutting our most profitable sector, Charles Warner interrupted. The senior board member's face was flushed with anger. The military contracts alone were worth billions. Those contracts were illegal, Tina spoke up from her seat beside Lucas. Her new position as Ethics and Community Impact Officer had raised eyebrows, but Lucas had been adamant. And they violated basic human rights. Warner's lip curled. With all due respect, Miss Williams, your experience running a coffee shop hardly qualifies you to... Her experience saving my life and helping expose corporate corruption more than qualifies her, Lucas cut in, his tone arctic. And it's Mrs. Hale now. The simple gold band on Tina's finger caught the light. They'd married quietly 3 weeks ago, Rose officiating in her hospital room after her last round of chemotherapy. No press, no glamour, just truth and love and family. Now, Lucas continued, let's discuss the new charitable foundation we're establishing with my personal funds. 50% of my shares will be transferred to a trust focused on education and healthcare access in underserved communities. The boardroom erupted in protests. Tina watched her husband stand firm, seeing both the billionaire CEO and the wounded man she'd found in that alley. Healing a company, she'd learned, wasn't so different from healing a person. It took time, patience, and the courage to face hard truths. Her phone buzzed, a text from Rose's nurse. All clear. Scan shows remission. She's asking for both of you. Tina smiled, showing Lucas the message. His eyes softened for a moment before returning to the battle at hand. The meeting was interrupted by Lucas's head of security bursting in. Sir, we have a situation. The London office. The screens behind Lucas flickered, then filled with static. When they cleared, a familiar face appeared. Victor Chen, one of Derek's former weapons buyers. Hello, Lucas. Chen smiled coldly. Missing any employees today? The room fell silent. Chen's image was replaced by security footage of the London office's parking garage. A woman was being forced into a black van. Dr. Diana Foster, their lead AI researcher. Simple trade, Chen continued, when the feed returned to his face. Dr. Foster's life for the original AI system, the one your brother promised us. You have 6 hours. The screen went dark. Lucas's hands gripped the podium, knuckles white. We should call the authorities, someone suggested. They're already compromised, Lucas said quietly. Chen has people everywhere. That's how they got to Diana. Tina was already moving, pulling up building schematics on her tablet. The kidnappers will take her to neutral ground. Somewhere they can verify the AI system before releasing her. Lucas raised an eyebrow. How do you know? Because that's what I would do. Tina's fingers flew over the screen, and because Rose taught me about strategy, remember? Chen's not just after the AI. He wants to prove you're weak, that the new Hale technologies can be bullied back to its old ways. The board members watched in stunned silence as Lucas and Tina huddled over the tablet, finishing each other's thoughts. The old warehouse district, near the Thames, yes, easy water access. But they'll expect us to know that, which means it's perfect. They're counting on our desperation, making us sloppy. So we'll be precise instead. Lucas straightened, addressing the board. Meeting adjourned. Tina and I have a plane to catch. You can't seriously be going yourself, Warner protested. The liability alone. My father built this company on lies, Lucas cut him off. My brother nearly destroyed it with greed. But my mother, she believed it could be something better. And she taught me that real leaders don't hide behind desks when their people are in danger. As they hurried from the boardroom, Tina made 2 calls, one to Rose's nurse, explaining they'd be late, and one to a number few people knew existed, a number that connected to Christina Hale's other contingency plans. We're going to need the team, she said simply. London, now. Lucas glanced at her as they entered the elevator. I love you, he said suddenly. You know that, right? I know. Tina squeezed his hand. And I love that you still think you need to remind me. If anything happens, nothing will happen. She pulled him close, feeling his heart race against hers. We faced your brother, your family's secrets, and the board from hell. We can handle An angry arms dealer. The elevator doors opened to the private garage where a car waited. As they slid into the back seat, Lucas's phone chimed with a message from Rose. "Give them hell, children, and bring our girl home." Tina smiled. From a chance encounter in a Brooklyn alley to a high-stakes rescue in London, their life was anything but ordinary. But then again, real love never was. The car sped toward the airport, carrying a reformed billionaire and his former savior, toward another battle. But this time, they weren't running from danger. They were running toward it together. And somewhere, Christina Hale's last pieces were falling into place, protecting the legacy she'd died for through the family she'd helped create. A family that wasn't built on power or secrets, but on trust, courage, and the kind of love that could rebuild worlds, even if they had to tear down the old one first. Rain fell steadily over London's East End, shrouding the abandoned warehouses in a familiar gloom. Tina crouched behind a stack of rusted shipping containers, rain dripping from her tactical gear. Through her earpiece, she could hear Lucas's steady breathing as he moved into position on the warehouse roof. 5 guards at the entrance, his voice came softly. 2 more patrolling the perimeter. Diana's being held in the northwest corner. "Chen," Tina whispered, checking the specialized tablet Christina's team had provided. The screen showed thermal signatures moving through the building. 3rd floor office. 3 bodyguards. Lucas paused. "You know this feels like a trap." "Of course it's a trap." Tina smiled, despite the tension. "That's why we're going to spring it our way." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While Lucas's presence on the roof drew attention, Tina would lead Christina's hand-picked team, former intelligence, operatives who'd helped gather evidence against Derek through the building's blind spots. But the real key was what Chen didn't know. Diana Foster had been working with them all along. The AI system Chen wanted wasn't just locked down. It had been rewritten, transformed into something even Christina hadn't envisioned. Something that could protect instead of control, heal instead of harm. "Teams in position," Tina confirmed. "Rose, how's our timing?" "Perfect, child." Rose's voice came through clearly from her command center in New York. Despite her recovering health, she'd insisted on coordinating the operation. "Police response is staged 6 minutes out. All cameras in the area are looped. You have a clear window." Tina touched the sapphire pendant at her throat, her good luck charm now. "Just like Brooklyn," she murmured. "Save someone who needs saving." "Except this time you're not alone," Lucas reminded her. The operation unfolded like a dance they'd rehearsed 1,000 times. Lucas's appearance on the roof drew predictable fire. While Chen's men were distracted, Tina's team slipped through the loading bay. The guards fell silently to non-lethal shots, each one carefully placed. They found Diana exactly where their intel suggested, already working to free herself. The researcher's eyes lit up when she saw Tina. "Right on schedule," Diana said, rubbing her wrists where the restraints had been. "Is the package ready?" Tina handed her a laptop. "Your stage. Make it count." Above them, the sounds of combat grew louder. Lucas was keeping Chen's remaining forces occupied, leading them on a chase across the roof. Every move calculated to appear desperate, playing into Chen's expectations of a reckless rescue attempt. They reached the 3rd floor as planned, Chen's office door guarded by his last 3 men. This was the moment of truth. "Mr. Chen," Tina called out, "I believe we have a meeting." The door opened. Victor Chen stood behind his massive desk, looking exactly like his video image, elegant, cold, dangerous. His eyes narrowed when he saw Diana working calmly at the laptop. "What is this?" "This," Diana said without looking up, "is the AI system you wanted. I'm transferring it to your servers now." Chen's smile was triumphant. "I knew Lucas would Make the right choice. Oh, he did, Tina agreed. Just not the choice you expected. Diana hit a final key. The office's screens flared to life, displaying lines of code that made Chen's smile fade. What have you done? The same thing Christina. Hale did, Diana explained, her voice steady. Built a failsafe, one that doesn't just expose corruption, it prevents it. The system you just downloaded, it's integrating with every network you control. Right now, it's transmitting evidence of your weapons deals to law enforcement agencies. Worldwide. Chen's hand moved toward his desk drawer, but Tina was faster. Her shot hit his shoulder, spinning him away from the weapon. It's over, she said quietly. You think this changes anything? Chen snarled through the pain. There will always be buyers, always be someone willing to use power to hurt others. Lucas's voice came from the doorway. He entered calmly, looking completely composed, despite the fight he'd just won. My family tried that path. Look where it led them. Police sirens grew closer. Chen's remaining men surrendered without a fight, their employer's empire crumbling around them in digital waves. Hours later, they stood in the private terminal at Heathrow, waiting for their flight home. Diana was talking excitedly about the AI system's potential medical applications. Lucas had his arm around Tina's waist, both of them battered but unbowed. You know, Tina said thoughtfully, I never did tell you why I really stopped to help. You that night in Brooklyn. Lucas looked down at her. Why did you? Because you reminded me of me, lost, alone, fighting battles no one could see. She touched his cheek, feeling the same spark that had drawn her to him from the beginning. I just never imagined those battles would turn out to be so literal. His laugh was interrupted by Rose's voice through their phones. Stop being romantic and get on that plane. These hospital walls are driving me crazy. They smiled, knowing she was probably already planning her next chess match with Lucas. Time to go home? Lucas asked. Tina looked at the man she'd saved, who had in turn saved her in ways she'd never expected, at Diana, who represented the new direction of Hale Technologies, at the sapphire pendant that had started it all. We're already home, she said simply. We're together. The flight back was smooth, the dawn breaking over the Atlantic, painting the sky in shades of hope. In New York, Rose waited with news of another successful treatment. The company's stock had risen 10% on news of the AI system's medical breakthroughs, and in Brooklyn, a small community center was opening, funded by the Hale Foundation, dedicated to Christina's memory. 1 year ago, Tina Williams had been a barista trying to make ends meet, helping her sick grandmother survive. Now she was Tina Hale, helping reshape one of the world's most powerful companies into a force for good. Life, she had learned, didn't always give you what you wanted. Sometimes it gave you what you never knew you needed. What are you thinking about? Lucas asked as their car wound through familiar Brooklyn streets. Tina watched the neighborhood pass by, the same streets where their story had begun. About choices, about how saving one life can end up saving so many others, about family and love and second chances. And, she smiled, taking his hand, and about how sometimes the biggest acts of courage aren't the ones that make headlines. Sometimes they're as simple as stopping to help a stranger in the rain. Lucas brought her hand to his lips, or trusting that stranger with your heart. Behind them, the sun rose over New York, painting the future in shades of gold. Ahead lay challenges, triumphs, and the endless adventure of building something new from the ashes of the old. But they would face it all together. The billionaire, the barista, and the grandmother, who had taught them both that real wealth wasn't counted in dollars. It was counted in acts of kindness, in moments of courage, and in the love that could transform not just a company, but the very meaning of family itself. And somewhere, Christina Hale was smiling, knowing her legacy lived on in ways far more powerful than she could have imagined. Not in empires of technology and control, but in the simple, world-changing power of one heart recognizing another. In the dark, and choosing against all odds to light the way home. The end. Thanks for watching to the end. Did you like the story? Tell us what you thought in the comments below. We want to know what you think. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe now for more exciting stories you won't want to miss. Activate the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. See you in the next story. See you there.